Welcome back to the Foundry by Forge College. Let me just start off by playfully congratulating you. Seriously, you survived the heavy cryptography and abstract math of our previous proof of work lesson. I mean, that was no small feat. But now that we understand exactly how cumulative work secures the chain, we need to talk about the physical reality of the network. Because, those brilliant mathematical rules, they don't just enforce themselves out of thin air. In this explainer, titled Introducing Bitcoin Nodes and Their Roles, we're going to look at the actual software programs, the literal physical machines humming away around the globe that keep this entire system ticking. So here is the big question. We learned that the longest valid chain reflects the most computational effort, right? And that each block has to adhere to really strict consensus rules before it gets accepted. But who exactly is doing the accepting? Like, who is actually looking at a block and saying, yep, this format is correct, the Merkle roots match, and the transactions are totally valid? To really grasp this, we've got to pivot our mindset away from the abstract math of mining and look at the physical reality of nodes running dedicated verification sequences. Here is our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, the need for nodes. Second, 3 key metaphors. Third, types of Bitcoin nodes. Fourth, the transaction journey. And finally, separation and redundancy. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The need for nodes, bringing Bitcoin to life. Remember those rigid consensus rules we just conquered? Well, they are completely useless without dedicated network actors, our nodes, to actually execute the checks. Now, before we look at these actors, I want to define a term you are going to hear a lot today, the mempool. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like a waiting room at a doctor's office. When you send a transaction, it doesn't just instantly magically appear in the blockchain. First, it goes to this local holding area. Every single node keeps its own mempool of valid, unconfirmed transactions. They're just kind of sitting there, flipping through old magazines, waiting for a miner to call their name and pack them into the next block. Keep this waiting room analogy in your back pocket so you aren't tripped up when we track a transaction's workflow later.
Moving on to Part 2, 3 key metaphors, the city of Bitcoin. Because this network relies on all sorts of different nodes doing totally different jobs, let's just picture a city. First up, we have the library. Now, a library catalogs, preserves, and serves the entire historical collection of books, right? In our city, these are the nodes dedicated to long-term storage. If a citizen or another node asks for a volume from, say, 10 years ago, the library retrieves it. And because the library meticulously checks every single book before putting it on the shelf, you can trust that it is the ultimate authoritative source for historical truth. If you need to know if a transaction really happened years ago, you ask the library.
Next, we've got the postal hub. Think of a massive, super busy regional sorting center. Their absolute priority is throughput and low latency. They grab incoming parcels, which in our case are new transactions and blocks, they sort them, and they rapidly forward them to neighboring hubs. They want maximum speed. Now, a postal hub isn't stopping to tear open every single package to deeply inspect the contents. No way. They do a quick scan, make sure it isn't obviously broken or leaking, and boom, ship it out. In the network, these are nodes that prioritize lightning-fast propagation so everyone gets the news immediately. And finally, the gatekeeper. Imagine literal guards standing at the city gates, checking the credentials of every single incoming traveler against this massive, incredibly strict rulebook. If a traveler's paperwork is even slightly off, the gatekeeper refuses passage, period. This is the absolute essence of consensus integrity. By rejecting invalid blocks and transactions right at the gate, they make it incredibly costly and practically impossible for false history to spread through the city.
All right, Part 3, types of Bitcoin nodes. Time to map these metaphors directly onto the actual tech. When you actually fire up a computer to participate, you have to decide what kind of software you're going to run. Notice how the network breaks down along 2 major axes here. Validation depth, meaning how strictly they enforce the rules, and storage scope, meaning how much data they actually save. Look at the archival full node at the top of the list. That is your library and your gatekeeper, rolled into one. It validates everything and stores everything. But then look down at the relay node. That's your postal hub, prioritizing speed over deep storage. And the mining node? Well, that's a specialized actor that not only validates, but actually puts in the sweat equity to produce the new blocks. I want to take a quick second to contrast 2 specific gatekeepers side by side because honestly, this is a super common point of confusion. Archival nodes are massive beasts. They store the entire history of the chain from day one. Pruned nodes, on the other hand, discard old block data to save disk space. But, and this is a huge but, pruned nodes perform the exact same rigorous mathematical validation as those giant archival nodes. They check all the same rules, they just don't keep the receipts forever. This is brilliant because it means anyone with a standard laptop can act as a fully validating gatekeeper without needing terabytes of expensive hard drive space. Then we have SPV, or Simplified Payment Verification. These are your light clients. Basically, if you have a crypto wallet on your mobile phone, you are almost certainly using SPV. A smartphone just doesn't have the juice or the storage to be a gatekeeper or a library, so SPV clients trade independent validation for pure convenience. They only download the tiny block headers, and when they need to check on a specific transaction, they just ask the network's postal hubs and libraries to deliver a compact cryptographic proof, a Merkle proof, that the transaction is absolutely legit.
Part 4. The transaction journey, from creation to finality. Okay, let's watch these actors interact in real time. Step 1 is creation. Your SPV mobile wallet creates a transaction, signs it with your private key, and does a quick check of its basic structure. Step 2, broadcast. Your wallet hands this transaction over to the network. The postal hubs immediately scoop it up and relay it outward using what are called inv, or inventory messages. Within seconds, the gatekeepers, your full and pruned nodes, receive it. They hit the brakes, check it against the strict consensus rulebook, and if it passes, they drop it into their mempool, our waiting room, so it can just chill and wait for a miner.
Moving right into step 3, mining. A miner looks into that mempool, grabs your transaction along with hundreds of others, and solves that massive proof of work puzzle we talked about to create a new block. Once solved, they broadcast this shiny new block back to the postal hubs. And then step 4, verification. The gatekeepers receive this brand new block. Now, they don't just blindly trust the miner. Oh no, definitely not. Every single full node independently revalidates the entire block and every single transaction inside it. Once they confirm it's flawless, they update their ledgers, and boom, your transaction has achieved finality. Finally, part 5, separation and redundancy, resilience by design. So why do we have this chaotic, heterogeneous mix of libraries, hubs, and gatekeepers instead of just running everything on one massive supercomputer? Well, the answer is resilience. By separating roles, we drastically increase network participation. Pruned nodes mean everyday people can enforce the rules without buying massive server racks. SVB clients mean you can transact securely while waiting in line for coffee. And because there are tens of thousands of independent gatekeepers constantly double-checking each other's work through peer discovery, we have incredible network redundancy. It makes it practically impossible for a malicious actor to isolate you in an Eclipse attack or push an invalid chain. There are simply way too many overlapping watchdogs. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. But I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. Now that you know the city of Bitcoin needs libraries, postal hubs, and gatekeepers to survive, which node type will you run to protect the network? Seriously, understanding these physical actors makes the underlying code so much more meaningful. In our next lesson, we are going to roll up our sleeves and look at the exact communication protocols these nodes use to talk to each other. Until then, I highly encourage you to head over to forge.college to continue your Web3 education and dive deeper into this topic and so many more. Keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next explainer.